Hey everyone, my name is Mike and I don't make games. Just kidding. So, that being said, let's take a look at the game I'm creating right now. Alright, so last week I told you guys that I was going to play test my game for the first time this coming weekend. I did. I got a really solid play test in. Took a little longer than expected because, you know, we have a little bit of a board setup going. It's a little more complex than like a Magic the Gathering, only because of a couple things in the game that I'll explain later, and I will show you the board in a little bit. So, let's take a look at some of the notes in our handy-dandy notebook here. Got some notes. So game number one. Essentially what happened was that initially it really seemed like the aggro deck, because remember we created an aggro deck and a control deck that are made specifically to fight against each other. And it looked like the aggro deck was just destroying the control deck. Sorry, I just have to close the door because the washing machine is running. It looked like the aggro deck was destroying the control deck to begin with. And I'm like, man, this is dumb. The aggro deck has a lot of direct damage that the control deck doesn't have. And that's it. But then, in all the games we played, the control deck won. Because the control deck had card draw. And that was something that I guess underestimated in power, which is strange because I know in a lot of games, like even Magic or Hearthstone, card draw is weighted pretty high. But for this game, I'm like, well, you know, there's a lot of bodies on the board. It's a lot about building your bodies and things. You know, maybe drawing the cards won't be so useful if they don't do anything really impactful and you put them out. And I was wrong about that. My opponent was regularly running out of cards, or whoever was playing the aggro deck was regularly running out of cards, and then would just lose all gas while the control deck could just throw guys out, right? And we realized a couple problems. One problem is that, you know, and remember the nature of the game that we're building is that every single creature in the entire game is both a spell and a creature, right? So you can play something as either a spell, say here, boom, just throw one out that I have lying around. This guy's a 3/4 for 5. Right, and he has some text. So you could either play him as a 3/4 for 5 with some text, or you can play him as a 5/5 for 5, or in our game it's a 6/6 for 5 with no text, right? So every minion can either be a vanilla minion or a minion that has some kind of spell when it comes out, a la like a battle cry from Hearthstone. So it threw some things into a loop there with the feeling like you're sort of drowning while playing because the control deck had all this card draw, and the aggro deck had literally no card draw, and it wasn't able to burn fast enough. And I will say that we had a game where the aggro deck drew a 100% perfect curve. A perfect curve. And still got slaughtered. Alright? And we're talking about slaughter like as in the aggro deck was only able to take the control deck down to about half life, and then the control deck was able to steamroll. And, oh, sorry, I started a thought earlier and never finished it, which was that, okay, because we can play things as either stats, you know, or body, just vanilla, normal bodies, or, you know, lower stats with a spell, it was seeming that the control deck, because it had access to more cards, what was happening was, it was saying, okay, I have all these bodies on the board, and I have all this gas in my hand, I can afford to play the fun cards. I can afford to play my cards as these fun spells instead of just bodies. And that was something that I sort of thought was strange. This may require some larger rework, and we'll see in the coming weeks how I feel about that. But it wasn't that fun to play the cards as vanilla minions, right? Playing a 2/2 for 2, like, that's not so fun. But playing a 1/2 that does something is a lot more fun. So I have some ideas about maybe how we're going to handle that in the future. Maybe something like a communal pool of creatures in the middle that everybody has access to. Like, if you want, you can put down an on-curve minion. I don't know, something strange like that. That might be way too much. That's probably out of the scope of the project, because remember, the project we're doing is to crank out one fully finished game. Not really art assets and everything, but crank out one fully finished game in about 2 months' time. Right, and we want to keep doing this until we get really, really comfortable with creating games. So that idea it probably won't make it into this, but it's something definitely to think about and something that I want to go over. So yeah, the whole thing feels a little win more, right? You only use spells when you're winning, and again, I just want to reiterate if it wasn't clear that, you know, I'm trying to, man, I should have been more prepared. I'm just trying to find some. I have a stack of magic cards next to me, and I can do nothing but pull sorceries. Oh man, here we go. Sure, that'll work. So you see this, like, this Rummaging Goblin, right? Rummaging Goblin is a 1/1 for 3 that's tap to discard a card and draw a card, right? So this would be, if we were to play this card in my game, that would be what's called like a spell summon, right? You'd summon him and you get access to this spell. But you would also have the opportunity to summon him as a 3/3, as a for 3 mana as a 4/4 with no ability, right? So that's it's feeling like if you're in a position where you feel comfortable casting these spells, you're probably winning more. Now, that has to do with the spell tweaking. The spells themselves have to be less, win more. Maybe the aggro deck needs to draw cards. It shouldn't really be an aggro versus a control deck. We should mix them. But this was a really good first playtest. A second thing that I wanted to mention was that blocking was getting a little strange. Here, actually, here's a good time for me to show you the board I devised. So, oof, I hope that works. Does this work? Yeah, that's good enough. Okay. Alright, so this is kind of the board we have. You have the normal row here and the spell row here, right? So if you summon a guy in the normal row, remember last week we talked about how I fixed the sort of housekeeping of, did you summon it as a normal or did you just summon it as a spell? And it is an alright idea, however we ran into another problem, and I'll show you this in a second. Okay, so the normal row, if you put a guy in the normal row, obviously this will be bigger, if you put a guy in the normal row, that means you summoned him as a normal, right? He only has his vanilla stats and no spell. If you summon a guy in your spell row, that means you summoned him with a spell and the lower stats. And then here's your mana on the side and your deck and graveyard. But then what happens? What happens when your normal guy wants to block another normal guy over here? What happens when that happens? Because in Magic the Gathering, just I know, like, there's not like rules for this necessarily, or maybe there are that I'm unaware of, but like I usually will just, like, if I have a guy, oh, he taps and he wants to attack me, I'll just push my guy up. Ooh, God. Oh, God, things are happening. Jesus. I'll push my guy up. And I'll be like, he's blocking him. Right? And it's a nice little visual way that we just sort of instinctually do, or I instinctually do when I play Magic. That wasn't really happening. It may have been because we were playing via Tabletop Simulator and it wasn't so easy to sort of manipulate things like that by hand, but I was afraid that was going to be a regular thing, that it was going to get a little hard to tell who's blocking who and what's doing what. So I think that needs a little bit of work too, either in the board or maybe what I was thinking is you put guys, maybe there's like a sidebar. I remember maybe it was like a Dice Masters game or something. I very vaguely remember it. There was like a side part. It was like the combat area of like the board, and you would put anything in combat over there. Like, okay, these guys are attacking, and then I would take my guys and put them in the combat area to show they're blocking. You know, so maybe that would help. That's not a terrible idea. So I was thinking of doing something like that. But another thing is that I'm wondering if 20 HP to start is too low. We started with 20 HP a la Magic the Gathering, and I'm wondering maybe that's a little bit too low. The games are a little too fast, but again, that's the kind of thing that we're going to have to work with after we tweak the decks a little bit, which we're going to do this week. And then, considering instant cast cards, I've been playing more Magic the Gathering, and one thing when I originally played Magic years ago was that instant speed cards really bothered me, because I didn't really understand the game that well, and they felt frustrating. It felt like, oh, I attack you with my guy, and then your opponent's like, no, you don't. And that just doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel like I devised this cool plan, and then oh, I want to pull it off, and then your opponent's like, no, you don't. So, but then once you realize that you're reading your opponent, and you're reading how much mana they have left, how many cards are in their hand, what kind of deck they're playing, things like that, it sort of clicks a bit. And now that I've been playing more Magic, I sort of see the depth in that, and there was a lacking depth in here, and that's a problem. And I don't know if instants are going to fix that, but it's something that I will definitely look into. But then you wonder, how would instants work if your cards are so versatile, right? Even when you cast a spell, you still get a creature on the board. This guy still comes out, even though he has got bad stats and he can chump block. He still comes out. So what if, and again, I don't know if this is a good solution, what if you can choose to play anything as an instant, but you don't get the body? But then would that cause people to just hold things in their hands? And, again, we want every turn to be meaningful decisions, and we don't want someone to be like, well, this has to stay in my hand until I can use it, because it's a counterspell. You would never, ever play counterspell as a vanilla minion. That would just never happen. You'd hold it in your hand waiting to counterspell something. Or cancel something. Oh, that's out of focus. How do I get this thing to focus? Oh, no. Whatever. Yeah, cancel it! Cancel! And that's where I'm at with the game right now. Those are the issues that we're having. Those are the issues that we're going to have to fix this week. Or at least attempt to fix this week. Tackle this week. We're going to have to mix the decks some more. We're going to have to think about, is it win more? How can we make it less win more? Is it fun to play vanilla minions? Not really. It doesn't feel fun. It feels like you're like, well, okay, I guess I'll just play this guy as a regular vanilla guy. It doesn't feel great. So we're going to figure out how to do that. You and me, we're going to figure this out. So if you guys have any ideas of how I can sort of fix these issues, I'd love to hear them in the comments below. If you like what you see, subscribe, hit that like button. Obviously, I'm going to be doing these every single week, so you can sort of keep up. I want to hear if you guys are making games. I want to hear about it. I want to know if you guys are making games. I want to hear. So that's what I'm going to call it. And stay tuned, because there's going to be another developer lesson this week, too. So, catch you later. Something. I don't know how to end these quickly and peacefully.